And we're live. Okay. Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome back to The Future of. Today's topic is going to be the future of software. I'm your host, Jonathon Narvey, the founder of MindMeld PR. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Vern Weitzman, the CTO and founder of Cira Apps Ltd and Atrezo. That's a quick snapshot of what it is that you do and who you are. Maybe you could provide a bit more background on how you came into this conversation. What makes you a technology leader?
Okay. In my recent history, I'm going to go back 20 years. I got really interested in BlackBerry in the early 2000s. I was one of BlackBerry's early consultants and promoters, and started developing software for BlackBerry in addition to a business where that my wife ran, where we were pushing BlackBerries and helping large enterprises deploy BlackBerry. So I've been doing that for a long time. So that's where I really got interested and got passionate about mobile data networking. And back in those days, we had this pager-sized device. It was a RIM 950 to a full 2 megabytes of memory, and it ran on a AA battery. And you could hook it up to your Exchange mailbox, and it would when you sent a message from the BlackBerry pager, it would send it from your Microsoft Exchange server mailbox, and when mail came in, you could open it and read it. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and so did my customers, all the companies I knew about that were using Microsoft Exchange server. And it was really fun to be in on the early days of BlackBerry and watch that platform evolve. So but basically BlackBerry had some holes in it, and it didn't have attachment handling and some other things. So we started building software for it, and Atrezo was launched in 2001. And then in about 2003, we pivoted to this context synchronization space that we live in right now.
I think I should provide maybe a little bit of context for viewers who came of age a little bit after myself and after Vern. So BlackBerry was not just a tech company on the scene. It was one of the tech companies on the scene, and Vern was right there on the ground floor. And so I think this gives you a very interesting and long-term perspective on the tech sector, and not just on the software front, but from the hardware, and then integrating with software. And so you've got an interesting perspective to offer on the future of software.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
So maybe we can move a little bit forward in time and talk about the changes that we've seen more recently in the software space. You're in the software as a service space, and you can talk about the changes, the move to the cloud, and other interesting changes in terms of how software is delivered. And soon we'll get to the topic of what software is going to do for us. But maybe right now we can combine those with how has software evolved in terms of how it's delivered and what it does for us.
Gosh, and how it's delivered. Yeah, I mean, so the traditional model, has been companies buy a piece of iron and a server, and they set it up. Maybe if you're a small company, you put it in a closet. And if you were a bigger company in the early 2000s, and you'd build your own computer room, and I had customers that would spend tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars building a small little data center in the corner of their building. AC requirements, upgraded electrical. They'd put all these servers in there, and there was an evolution though, because after a few years, virtualization started to come out. and now companies could replace a dozen servers with a single server. And so that was kind of an interesting transition to see, where you had these organizations with hundreds or sometimes thousands of servers and could consolidate them down to a fraction of those servers. And then,
Can I interject with
sure.
a quick story? So this is one of my first marketing gigs with a tech firm, and this was a number of years ago, and there was an on-site server. And to me, I come into tech not as a builder of technology, but as a communicator of it. So to me, it was eye-opening to see this man behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz moment, where the magic was revealed to be a nerd sitting in basically a small closet with a server babysitting it, and I had no idea what with it to make sure that the company just could operate, because there was something that was hamstringing our operations. So I'm glad to see we're evolving from that.
Yep. Yeah, there was a lot of, I visited a lot of businesses and helped them out when they had a server in a closet, and it usually didn't end well. It was usually pretty bad, because the closet didn't have the right ventilation, so the server got real hot, and since it was at a site, hard disks would start to fail, and nobody would know until the whole thing just melted down, and then I would get calls to tell them the bad news, that their server was toast. But yeah, it's been a pretty amazing evolution to watch from that point, the future of computing and what happened for small businesses, because now today, those same companies that had a server, Microsoft Exchange, a file server, some application, and all that stuff would be running in their closet. And they'd spend a few $1,000s for a server. They'd pay another few $1,000s a year for a consultant like me to come in and keep it working and fix it. But now they can put that in the cloud, and they can run that on Microsoft or Azure and run Office 365, or they can put something on Amazon or Google. And for just a relatively small monthly cost, they don't have any headaches. They don't have to worry about the closet overheating or running out of electrical capacity. And so that's been a phenomenal thing to watch, and as the future of computing. So if for people not really thinking about that, we have on-premise infrastructure, and then now then the next evolution in terms of computing was infrastructure as a service. So somebody will give you a server to run in their data center, and they'll manage the server for you. And it could also be that they gave you a virtual machine, and you were responsible for running your entire application on your own virtual machine. So it's basically the same thing. You just didn't have to worry about the hardware. Then the next step up from there is platform as a service, where somebody might have web servers or web services, and you could literally say, okay, I want to put up this website on 100, and they would manage the WordPress installation or whatever platform it is you have for 100 servers, keep them all running, keep it scalable, and you can increase or decrease your server capacity. That's platform as a service. The next evolution in our computing history is SaaS, software as a service. And that takes even one more responsibility away from the customer. They're just renting the software. Everything else is run. So what my company does, Cira Apps Ltd, we have a platform called CiraSync, and it does a form of contact synchronization for Microsoft Office 365 and Exchange, and customers don't need to know anything about setting up software. They just log in, grant consent or grant permission to our application, and they get what they want. Sometimes within 60 seconds, they're up and running. As where if our application, which is Itrezo 20 years ago when we started, it could take several hours to set up the server and get it running, and require your own hardware and software. So significantly more expensive. So that's from the past to the future. In the future is SaaS. Basically companies don't want to run the infrastructure and hire expensive developers and consultants, assist IT people to run those systems.
So This is terrific detail and context for people to understand what goes on behind the scenes, or what has gone on behind the scenes to make this technology and the software that runs our lives possible. I think back, it wasn't that many years ago that software was something you might use for business. You might not see much. You might not be using apps in your regular life, and our lives have transformed to the point where software is sort of like the air we breathe, the water we drink. It's everywhere. As human beings, we've sort of entered a new stage where the technology it's enabling us to do new and interesting things, and even better, it's enabling us to do these things without maybe what people thought the future was going to look like, and maybe that is what it's going to look like still. You think of Terminator cyborgs, but basically the idea of a cyborg where the technology is clunky, it's clearly there. There's a lot of metal everywhere. Versus the actual world that we have created, where the software is seamless, it's behind the scenes, a lot of it is browser based, or it's just invisible.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can talk a little bit more about, you gave incredible context of what has happened until now. Where do you see where do you see the future of software going now in terms of what it can do for us?
Yeah, there's so I'm actually amazed at what's happening. If you look at machine learning right now and what's happening in that space, you've got hundreds, thousands of teams, companies building products for machine learning, and so this is something that's like really obvious is to look at images and for example. This has been around for a while, but look, put a camera on a car and get the license plate, take the license plate and convert it from, the image into text and to record that. So what's different between now and 10 or 15 years ago? So maybe there was an algorithm that the state of California might have purchased to have cameras on a freeway and put that feed back to a data center and analyze the license plates and record them. And for a couple of $1 million here and a couple of million there, they can have that kind of infrastructure to put all those things into a database and do whatever applications they need with it. But now, literally, for I'm going to say like dollars per day, dollars per month, whatever it is, based on your volume, it might change. But you can put together an application. Let's say you're the owner of a parking garage, and you're about to up your parking gate, where people pay with credit card or get a physical parking ticket and come back in a few hours, and then they pay their money. And the reason I say this is the parking garage in our headquarters, it's just kind of a pain if I don't have a monthly parking pass, and I stop my monthly parking pass because we're in COVID lockdown, and I go there for 1 hour a week. But so anyway, so the car comes into a parking garage, and it looks at the license plate, and it goes and it looks you up, and it looks in the cloud, and it says, oh, that guy, oh yeah, he's paid, he's got an account with us. And then it will turn around and just bill your credit card. So it says, okay, he came in at 3 p.m. He left at 4:15 p.m. We're gonna charge him $15. And so you didn't have to do anything when there's no more gate. It just looked at your thing, or maybe it stopped you if it didn't recognize your license plate, and it made you sign up for an account, and then it sent you to your smartphone to go put your credit card information. But the real distinction about this is that it's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot easier for people to do these kind of applications. A developer could, on their own, without all that expensive infrastructure, could build an application like that in probably a few days and have it up and running for somebody who owns a parking garage. and the possibilities of other applications like that are just endless. What's going to happen with this really inexpensive way to um, leverage artificial intelligence? I mean, some other examples are, people are building SaaS applications with AI that look at camera and it can tell, your emotions. And it can say, oh, this person's happy, they're sad, they're confused, they're upset. All those emotions, there's probably 20, 30 emotions that they can pick up. And so now, when, you're giving a presentation or a sales pitch, or let's say you're in marketing and you want to have, you want to do a study, you've built this you've made this really new commercial, really awesome commercial, and you think it's the greatest thing in the world. And, now you can go put that on a Zoom meeting with 100 people, or maybe it's smaller, but, there's the Brady Bunch, there's tiles for all the people that are basically appearing on the screen. And now this software can analyze the emotions of all those people and correlate it to different points in the ad. And they can see, when people are interested, when they're getting bored, when they're excited, when they're upset, and then they can go back and tune the ad to really make sure they're coming up with an effective pitch. And of course, the applications don't just go to marketing. It could be you're in telemedicine, and you're looking to get reactions from people. You're giving a presentation to people. Tons and tons of applications where you're able to give people support and help people by knowing what their emotions are, and providing them the right content at the right time. And again, the point being that this doesn't cost you millions of dollars and take months or years of development. This is stuff you can throw together in hours or days and get up products like this. And that's what blows my mind.
Yeah, we live in an amazing time where, as you say, these things are happening at a faster and faster pace, cheaper to build. We're getting more and more convenience from it. At the same time, and I'm what I'm about to say, full well, I'm a cheerleader of technology, and of course you are yourself, to the extent that you are a leader in the tech field in Silicon Valley, no less. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what your take is. The dangers of AI, and you can think of the technology that you were just talking about that enables marketers to figure out whether or not people are having a good or a bad or indifferent reaction to products. And you can think how let's say China is already weaponizing that against its own citizens, to the point that there may already have been sort of a Winston Smith incident of someone, the state controller talking to through their TV to, I don't know who what the name would be of the person on the other end, that I'm not going to attempt to change the name, but where, hey, you're not doing your calisthenics correctly this morning. Mm-hmm. And you seem to have a bad attitude.
Yeah, well, it really is Big Brother.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in all sense of the term, from the Orwellian term, I guess. Especially when you can monitor millions of citizens all in one shot and automate the responses and customize it. Yeah, there will definitely be some abuses of this in the future.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the big tech companies in Silicon Valley? So I'm talking about, Google and Facebook and all, well, I could list them off for 2 hours. But how they are using this technology, again, to try to make things more convenient, but and enable us to do the things we want to do, and at the same time they have to make money. So I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. I don't want you to burn any bridges.
There's some timely information about this today. iOS 13.5 was released, I think, and it has in it the iOS contact tracing capability. It's built in to the OS, and other organizations, government agencies can take advantage of that API for contact tracing. But what I've been reading for the last few weeks is that all of these different countries, France and the UK and Australia and different states in the US, they're all totally upset at Google and Microsoft because they made this contact tracing application that allows you to opt in to know when you've been in contact with other people, but it's all anonymized, and you don't know the location. So it might there might be a record that you were at a party with 20 other people, and then later on you report that you were tested positive for corona. So now, in theory, the other 20 people can be notified anonymously, right? You say, I've been tested positive, and they say, well, you were, on Friday, May 10, you were at this location, and somebody at that location tested positive. So, okay, so they went to all this trouble to keep this anonymous, to really have in mind the user of the phone, to not expose any potential risks to people. And it seems like they went so far overboard, it's pissed off all these state and local governments. They're furious because they can't build this themselves, because it will tear down the battery. People have to run their application in order for it to actually work. It would never succeed. So here they are. On the one hand, they're getting totally brutally beat up. Now today, they launched the iOS application, and what did somebody do? They took a screen snapshot of the iOS release notes, posted them on Facebook, and said, "Oh, Apple is now monitoring where we are, and they're tracking our location." And they, just basically all the stuff that they had gone to great details to try to avoid, and to put their foot down and stand firm against all these governments that, they were afraid ultimately you're going to use this for totalitarian purposes. The exact thing that they were trying to avoid, people who are somewhat ignorant about the subject are claiming that, Apple's now tracking everything about them and where they're going, and they took their release notes completely out of context and started spreading around, this crazy information. And so,
this reminds me of a phenomenon, and sorry, I won't interrupt for too long because I think you were going somewhere really good. This reminds me of a phenomenon Sam Harris noted, where he's a neuroscientist, and he's talked about, if you talk to a large enough room full of people in physical form or an online forum, if there's enough people in the room, at least a small percentage of the people in the room are going to think you said the exact opposite of the thing that you said. It's we're fighting against human nature here.
Yeah. And I might be one of those people that didn't really listen very carefully or use my own filters to assume the worst when I get some information. It's pretty difficult. Yeah, there's and perhaps maybe that's the really cool thing about machine learning, is that you can start to have tools that will allow you to discover your own cognitive biases, and kind of get down into some more inalienable truths about what's going on in certain situations. But anyway, just to wrap up that part about Apple, you asked me what do I think about tech companies, and I think in this case, Apple and Google both have a vested interest in convincing people that their platform is safe and that they're not being tracked and that their privacy is not being taken away. And Apple in particular has stood pretty firm against federal agencies that wanted them to break into the encryption on an iPhone, and they've refused, and they've claimed that no, we can't do that. We designed this so we can't get to it. And there's third parties that have been able to successfully crack things, and then Apple turns around and makes it more secure. So I think that in this case, it is in Apple's vested interest. They have probably trillions of dollars of, business at stake if they start to, violate their principles and give nation states access to data on people's phones. People won't think it's secure, and they'll look to other means, other platforms, and so that's the answer to your question. Is I think that for the most part, most companies, most of the big companies, Microsoft, Apple, Google, they're going to try really hard to protect their users above all else. I mean, and even Microsoft as an example. A couple of years ago, there was this lawsuit. The federal government was suing Microsoft to get access to, I guess it was some drug kingpin. They had stored their data on a Microsoft server, but it was hosted in Ireland. And Microsoft said, no, you can't have the data. And and in Ireland, they said, no, you'd have to go to Ireland to get permission to access the data. And Ireland said no. So and basically, the Justice Department tried like crazy to convince Microsoft and the courts that they were entitled to that data because Microsoft was a U.S. company, but ultimately the data geolocation was what mattered, and so so Microsoft spent all that money to defend in general, not for that customer, not for the drug the drug dealer or whoever it was, but just because as a matter of principle. You have to have legal right to the data and get a subpoena or whatever it is. That's whatever the tool is. So anyway, that's my perception that they're all trying to. These companies are trying to protect users' privacy and corporate privacy.
Yeah. Well, and over the strenuous efforts of governments. This reminds me, and I don't want to dwell on it too much longer because I think we've sort of covered this point, but it reminds me of the long-standing effort by governments, particularly U.S. Security agencies, to try to legislate for. It may not be legislated, maybe more of a bureaucratic effort to get big tech companies to create backdoors into their platforms, just so that they can catch the terrorist or the drug dealer, and it's been obvious. I'm not a security expert or technologist by any means, but I understand intuitively if you build a backdoor for the government, number one, who's to say that government is going to operate in a responsible way, or indeed that every single government employee is going to operate in a responsible way. But beyond that, if you built that back door, others can find it and exploit it.
Did you know that in China, that I'm not really against Huawei or any of this stuff, and I'm not. I think that a lot of the ban that Trump has put on Huawei is kind of political, mostly in nature. But in China, my understanding is that companies have to put in backdoors. I mean, maybe I'm saying this, I'm overgeneralizing, but if if you're a company in China, your license to operate, basically says that if somebody, from the government comes and asks you to do X, you've got to do it. And so there's a little bit of a difference in what we have between our governments there. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Well, this is an interesting segue to the final point I wanted to cover in this conversation, was just how in an age when information is transferred literally instantly anywhere in the world. How does America keep its technological edge? And so I'm going to provide a little bit more context and then let you play with this. In past decades, the USA was sort of seen as the arsenal of democracy, but maybe as important or more importantly, it's just this foundation of innovation. There are more patents for U.S. technology than anywhere in the world, and the system seems to support a dynamic pursuit of new technologies. And so how do you continue doing that? Maybe times are better now that, you know, the US is taking steps to sort of mitigate or finally stop the outright theft of intellectual property. And I don't need to name the country that seems to get named all the time in that regard, but we've already mentioned them. I don't know. I wonder if you had thoughts about this, how America, or more specifically American companies, American entrepreneurs, you know, help maintain that technological edge that is
Yeah.
a huge advantage.
Okay, no, I understand the question. That's good. It's a good question. So I guess the first thing is, you know, we spy on all the other countries, right? I mean, maybe the distinction is the U.S. doesn't spy for commercial, you know, doesn't do, you know, industrial espionage the way China does. But it still, we do tons of espionage and use whatever information we can get for intelligence. At least that's you know, based on things I've read or heard people discuss. But at the same time, I think it's their responsibility and our responsibility to lock down our networks and not be stupid about, you know, leaving you know, leaving data exposed on web servers, you know, up in the cloud. And people need to you know, keep their computers secure and patched and up to date. And you need to educate your employees not to click on emails and fall for scams. And it's just so. I mean, maybe that's part of our future. Maybe the way for our next generation to avoid this and to become the technological leader again is to be able to keep our technology secret and not have it be stolen. But you know, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and maybe she should be. It's about the time where she should be going she should be attending a class on cybersecurity and what she can do personally to you know, be aware of you know, phishing emails and installing applications from the internet that are untrusted and things like that. Because I am amazed at how many people, senior executives, people with really smart people who you would think wouldn't fall for this stuff, they have. And the social engineering is such that they've, you know, they've, you know, the CFO wired, you know, $150,000 to a scammer because they thought it was their boss.
Mm.
You know, they thought their boss was in a hurry and needed this $150,000. It was an emergency. I need you to wire this right away. They fell hook, line, and sinker and did it. So I think you know, people click on an email, and before you know it, that some hacker has access to the inside of your network, and then they will work their way around until they have so many backdoors you can't secure it. And of course, you know, there's been many famous incidents of that now.
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, just last week, a family member and one of the smartest people I know for anything is he called me in a bit of a panic because he had clicked on something and he realized probably 5 minutes later. So he was able to take some steps, but he had to call in some professional IT support to protect himself. And he's reasonably assured that he's safe. But yeah, I guess the point, you know, tying into the overall theme of our talk, you know, if we want to keep this magical technology that enables us to do whatever we want, and it's invisible and not clunky, and it's amazing, we have to protect ourselves. So, you know, just like with many of these talks, it comes down to Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And that is the future of software. I think that was a great talk. I'm very mindful of your time right now, Vern. Was there anything you wanted to add to anything we've discussed right now? Something that I missed that was crucial?
Nope, I think we covered some cool things. If I had any advice, I mean, my passion is going to be to spend more time learning about machine learning and trying to get ahead of the curve in that area. So that's where somebody came to me and said, you know, where can I get a fresh start? And where would I get gainful employment over the next, 10 to 15 years? Basically, machine learning now is having a skill to understand it and employ and use it to develop real business applications. It's going to be a golden opportunity. It's going to be like it was to be a software developer in Silicon Valley, starting 10 years ago. Being able to name your salary will be very in demand career.
Well, I'm sure that'll be very helpful advice for a lot of people right now who are looking for what their next opportunity will be. So I think that's a great place to end this. Before I let you go, how can people find out more about Cira Apps?
So CiraSync.com, CiraSync.com. That's our website for our SaaS application. If you start there, I think that's the best place to go.
Perfect. All right. Well, Vern, it has been a pleasure. You have been listening to The Future of Software. I'm your host, Jonathon Narvey, and I will see you at some point in the future.
All right. Have a good day.
Take care.